All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get going here. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Nicole Knight. I'm the Executive Director of ELMA, our English Language Learner Multilingual Achievement Office. And we at ELMA are excited to share with you our fourth webinar in our English Language Learner series. We like to call it our LNRs. And this one is focused on our little ones, our TK to first grade English language learner babies. We know that they're really at a really critical age, and especially difficult during this time to think about what distance learning can look like. And so happy to have our incredibly talented multilingual team lead this webinar today. So I'm going to hand it over to Maria to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Ingles, and I'm a language specialist for ELMA. Daniel?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Pastrana. I am also one of the language specialists in the ELMA department. Welcome, and I'm going to pass it over to Lubia. Who may be frozen, we'll see. While she's coming in connection, Lubia is the third person of our multilingual team. She'll be monitoring the chat today, and Maria and I will be the main presenters. All right, I'll go on the next slide. So as folks are coming in, again, welcome. We really appreciate you joining us today. As Nicole mentioned, we all have a fond place in our hearts for our younger elementary age students. So we wanted to, as an opening, have you use the chat feature to share one reason why you enjoy working with lower elementary age students. And if you haven't already, just go ahead and put your name and the site that you work on as well. And we'll read some of those out to the group as they get shared with us and as folks arrive. And just as a note, both Maria and I worked as kindergarten teachers for the bulk of our teaching experience. That's why we are really excited to share this presentation with you. And the photo that you're seeing in your screen right now is actually of my final kindergarten class about 3 years ago, before I stepped into my role in ELMA. On a field trip that we took almost 3 years to the day ago. We would go every May to Lake Merritt to learn about the ecosystem around the lake. So I'm seeing some comments, energy and enthusiasm from the students. Absolutely. There's nothing like the enthusiasm of a 4 to 6 year old. The excitement that kindergartners show for learning new things. Absolutely. Can't forget the hugs. Let's see. They never seem to lose their sense of awe and wonder at the world. Yes. The newness, the excitement, how impressionable and their sense of wonder. So, all right, folks, thanks for sharing. Continue to drop in anything else in the comments. Just a couple of logistical points. If you would like to follow along on the slide deck, there's the tiny URL that's linked at the bottom of each slide so that you can follow along. And also, go ahead and use the chat feature if you want to ask questions throughout the course of the presentation. We'll have 2 natural stopping. We will do question and answer, but like I mentioned, we'll have Lubia and Nicole monitoring the chat, so please go ahead and send us your questions as they come up. So today, in our presentation today, we have learning targets for us. The first one is to familiarize ourselves with the 5 English language learner essential practices that are applied in a distance learning context. And that's a document that you see linked in there. We'll be referring to it, but in, later on, if you want to go take a look at it, that has all of the practices. We're going to focus in on 3 of them today: access and rigor, integrated and designated ELD, and addressing the needs of the whole child. We're also going to review some TK to first grade friendly tools and resources that are aligned to these practices. And then finally, we're going to see some examples of what this looks like in real life. What are our OUSD teachers doing to bring these practices to their classrooms? So we have a bunch of videos that we want to share with you. Okay, so next slide, please. As we mentioned, there are 5 essential practices that we have. And the ones that we're going to focus in on today are, again, access and rigor, integrated and designated ELD, really with more of a focus on the integrated ELD portion, and finally addressing the needs of the whole child. Okay. So in this first section, we're going to look at the first essential practice, which is access and rigor. And that really encapsulates making sure that we're providing high challenge tasks while still giving the necessary scaffolds for our English language learner students and our language learners in general to have success. And basically, we still want to use the same scaffolds that we use during in-person teaching, but transfer them over into this new digital realm that we're living in. Okay.
So the first thing that we are going to look at is we are going to show you how to use different online tools to support your students in the TK through first context. So, sorry. Yes. One thing that we are going to show you is how to use Google Slides first to introduce, review or introduce new concepts with the support of visuals. And then you can see here at the top how I use that same Google slide, and you see me in the corner. Because then what I did is I just created a Zoom meeting and I recorded myself teaching the lesson. So then I could also support the language learners using gestures and realia. Okay, so let me see. Yes, for example, here you have the slides that I created where I can include the objectives. I can include the review of what kind of tests we are going to do, you know, like the new content, main idea and key details, okay? And then let me go back to the presentation. Yes, the next thing that we are going to see is actually seeing that in how I usually use it with the Zoom, okay? So here you are going to see just a little piece of the video, but everything is linked there. So if you click on the image, you will see that it has a video for everything, okay? So we are just going to show you a little bit, but you have the whole thing if you want to see it. Just some context, this was created for a dual language class, and it's in Spanish. But we thought that that was a great opportunity for all of us experience being a language learner, and also to start thinking what supports are we using there to make that content accessible for language learners, okay? Also, in case you cannot follow the whole thing, it would be like an informative test, and it would also be like we would be working on main idea and key details that we are not seeing in the video. We are just going to see one part of the picture walk, okay? Let's look at the video.
Ok, aquí veo otra estación, el otoño, y veo otras ilustraciones. Ok, vamos a prestar atención a esta ilustración. ¿Qué piensas que significa esta ilustración? Aquí, ¿verdad? Una palmera que parece que está tumbada, me pregunto por qué. ¿Ok? Entonces vayan a pensar qué significa esta ilustración y pueden decir, yo pienso buen trabajo. Pasamos la página.
So as you could also observe, I included some wait time, and the idea behind that is that we wanted to provide the opportunity for the students to record themselves during the week, answering these questions, and then sending them to the teacher, and the teacher sharing them at the end of the week so they can see each other and also celebrate, you know, their learning during the week. Because we have noticed how for them it could also sometimes be isolating, so they really enjoy seeing each other and seeing themselves. Okay, so that was for the before reading. Okay, some things to consider also to include before reading. We didn't see them in the video, but they are in, we didn't see them in the part of the video that we saw, but they are in the whole video. Might be including some main objectives. As I mentioned before, one was review the key features of an informative test, but also main idea and details and key details. And also, you know, you might want to consider to have some opportunities to introduce vocabulary or review vocabulary, as you can see there. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to see a video of the activity that I did during reading. Okay, So we are going to see two pieces of the video. The first one is going to see me using the Google slide with gestures. And the second part would be me reading one page of the test and trying to use as many gestures as possible to try to make it as accessible as possible for the language learners. Okay, so let's watch the second video.
También recordemos que esta semana vamos a trabajar la idea principal, ¿verdad? Y los detalles clave, ¿ok? Hoy nos vamos a centrar en la idea principal y les voy a dar una pista, ¿ok? Muchas veces la idea principal se encuentra en el título del capítulo o en la primera oración del capítulo que leemos. Y las pistas, las ilustraciones también nos dan pistas, ¿ok? Muy bien, vamos a empezar a leer.
So now we are going to move to one of the pages of the book, of the test. It's 624. There.
¿Verdad? Capítulo 4. La primavera. Otra pista. Yo pienso que la idea principal de este capítulo es la primavera, que vamos a aprender cosas sobre la primavera. Hay un dicho que dice, cuando la primavera llega, hay un dicho que dice, la primavera llega como un león y se va como un corderito. ¿Qué crees que quiere decir ese dicho? Para responder a la pregunta, piensa en cómo es el tiempo en invierno y cómo es en verano. A fines de la primavera, las temperaturas se hacen más cálidas y los días se hacen más largos. En la primavera se juega al béisbol.
So that would be just a part of the during reading lesson that we were seeing, okay?
All right, and so we just saw Maria using Zoom to record herself using a digital copy of a text. The text that she was using comes from the Benchmark Advanced and Adelante curriculum, but a lot of curriculums have digital platforms where you're able to access the book, and that's what she did. Just wanted to show a few screenshots. The videos, again, are linked into this slide deck if you want to watch the whole video, but here's an example from Greenleaf Elementary, Stephanie Clark, kindergarten teacher. Instead of using a digital copy of the book, what she did is she used posters that she had brought with her from school to talk about fantasy and realistic fiction. And on the next slide, you see that she actually was able to bring the big book home with her. And so she just goes ahead and on this YouTube video that she created, she reads from the big book instead of using a digital copy. And that way she can help reinforce concepts of print, directionality, and still do the same basic format that Maria did, just in another way. So this is just we wanted to show that there's different ways of getting at the same goal, whether that's recording yourself on Zoom, whether that's recording yourself with your iPhone, reading aloud a physical copy of the book. Either way works. And we wanted just to highlight some of the different scaffolds that were used, which we're going to look at again in a moment. Okay, so just to summarize, what we just saw were some scaffolds and strategies that happen in both formats. Just to review, so we had previewing of the text. So that's happening before we actually read the complex text. Use of gestures or TPR. TPR, again, is total physical response to highlight specific vocabulary. The use of oral sentence frames. We saw Maria give her students some time to pause and answer using an oral sentence frame. The naming of a lesson's objective, so students know what they're going to be working on and how they're going to do it. The use of visuals to highlight concepts such as main idea and key details. And then the use of wait time to promote student response in an asynchronous lesson. So again, the concept being that students can rewatch these lessons over and over again, and they can actually interact even though it's not live. And again, if you're just tuning in or just arriving a little late, all of the videos that we're sharing and all the examples are linked into the slide deck. The slide deck is available in the tiny URL that's at the bottom of most of our slides here. But if you want to review afterwards and see these examples in detail, you can click on the image and that'll send you right to the link. Okay. So.
Yeah, also, I think that someone asked about the Google slide. If you click on the image of the Google slide, you will have access to it too. Everything is linked to where we are presenting.
All right, so we're going to move now into our second essential practice with integrated and designated ELD. And as I mentioned initially, we're going to focus more on the integrated portion today. And for the purpose of this presentation, we really just wanted to hit upon the main idea that we want to make sure that language is still being supported and that our English language learners have opportunities to build language in all subject areas. So we're going to see several examples of that coming up.
Okay, so we are going to talk about how to provide explicit language instruction. You can use every opportunity to explain how English or language works. It is a great opportunity to explain what the word means using visuals to support the language that is behind, even in a phonics lesson. So again, we are going to go back to my kinder class in Spanish, and I am going to show you a small part of my phonics lesson. My phonics lesson would include more parts than the one that we are going to see, like the objectives, explaining how to the letter name and the sound, and then we are going to see the segmenting part. I would like you to pay attention to how I explain what the word means, and also I'm using visuals and I'm using gestures to support their learning. Okay, so I think this is this one. Yes.
Hoy vamos a separar los sonidos de 3 palabras para ver si empiezan con el sonido y y se escriben con Y. ¿Ok? La primera palabra que vamos a ver hoy es yema. Y la yema es la parte amarilla del huevo. ¿Ok? Vamos a prepararnos para separar los sonidos. Recuerden que lo hacemos con el brazo. Vamos a ver cuál es el primer sonido de yema. Y. ¿Tiene el sonido y? Sí, ¿verdad? Muy bien. Entonces eso quiere decir que se escribe con la Y. Vamos a continuar y hacemos Y. Ajá. La E. Continuamos. Yem. M. Y vamos a ver el último sonido. ¿Ok? Yema. Ajá. La A. Muy bien. Vamos a ver la siguiente palabra.
That would be just a small part of the class or the lesson that I did. You can see the whole thing. It has also blending, high frequency words. You can see everything there. And also, you know, like, I think in the blending part, we talk about cognates, words that are pretty similar in English and Spanish. So you can get ideas on how to make your phonics lesson also focus on language.
All right, now we're going to look at an example from Marta Saez, kindergarten teacher at Greenleaf. And as Maria has been highlighting, we all know the importance of foundational skills of phonics and phonemic awareness. So this is just a quick 30-second section of how she begins her phonics routine by reviewing letter sounds and names. And she does it in Spanish because it's a dual language program, but I want to highlight the similarities between English and Spanish of the consonant sounds. Just something to keep in mind, even if we teach in an English-only setting, it's important to know that those connections can be made across language. So let's check out how she begins her phonics routine.
Hola, buenos días. ¿Qué tal estáis? Vamos a empezar la clase del miércoles. ¿Preparados? De sonidos y de letras. Vamos a empezar con nuestro juego del minuto y 10 segundos, mejor dicho. Y vamos a ver si podemos decir todas las letras y todos los sonidos lo más rápido posible. ¿Sí? Vamos allá. Pues preparados, listos. Letra A, sonido A. Letra B, sonido B. Letra S, sonido S.
All right, there you go. So that's just reviewing the letter name and sound. The next example we have is from Miss Spragia, first grade teacher at Madison Park Academy. And before going on, just a huge shout out to all the teachers who did help us out and contribute by sharing videos of their teaching. It's really, really inspiring, really exciting to see. So here we have an example of the Michael Hegarty phonemic awareness routine. A lot of us are familiar with it. We use it in many schools. And the full video, again, as with all of these slide deck, but we're going to see a section where she highlights and practices phoneme segmentation. And I just wanted to point out in terms of scaffolds that she's using, notice the use of hand gestures and how she's providing students wait time so that they can participate even though it's an asynchronous lesson. So let's check it out.
room 3. It's Miss Raja. Today is day 2 of our week 21 integrity. We're going to learn a couple of new vowel sounds, but first we're going to play around with some phonemes. Sound good? Awesome. All right. I'm going to say the word. You're going to say the word, and then we're going to break it up. Okay? Sauce. Jaunt. Jaunt. Before. Before.
Audio was a little choppy there. Apologies for that, but if you do click on the link and just play it back for yourself, you can hear a little bit clearer. But again, just an example of how to incorporate phonemic awareness into a morning routine. Okay. So now we're going to jump into a really important section, and that's providing opportunities for our students to talk. And as we all know, even in person at the younger elementary age, it's pretty tricky to get students to listen to each other, to build off of each other's ideas when speaking. But at the same time, this is really, really important for language development, even more so in times of distance learning. And so there's a couple links for some synchronous opportunities for students to get together and talk. That could be through Google Chats, through Zoom, but we know it's tricky to get students to show up at the same time, and it doesn't always work. So we wanted to highlight a different method of doing an asynchronous method using an app called FlipGrid. And this is a really great opportunity to get students to record an answer to a prompt that you set up for them. And it's also really important because it gives our English language learners the opportunity to hear their classmates' responses, students who are fluent English speakers. And that gives them the opportunity to practice and produce language by lowering the effective filter, because they're not doing it live, they're recording it, and they can hit re-record as many times as they want until they're happy with it. So it also sets students up to be passive learners and gives them the opportunity to make meaning and use language. So we're going to see an example here in a moment of a FlipGrid that I set up for my imaginary kindergarten classroom, and it's actually in reference to the text that Maria was using in her before reading and her during reading activities. So in this section, I want to ask my students to respond to a prompt, and you're going to see me highlighting some key vocabulary and using some sentence frames to give students an extra scaffold if they need it. So we're going to check out a section of this video. Now we're going to get ready to do some thinking and talking about the 4 seasons. Just to remind us, the 4 seasons that we saw in our text were the summer, the fall, the winter, and the spring. And we're going to think back on what the key details were that we learned about each one of these seasons. And I'm going to give us some sentence frames that we can use in a little bit to record one sentence using one key detail about one of the seasons. So our sentences that we can use are: in the summer, blank; in the fall, blank; in the winter, blank; and finally, in the spring, blank. So I'm going to give us an example. I'm going to choose the summer, and I'm going to think back, what was a key detail that I learned about the summer that I can use to describe it using a complete sentence? Okay, here we go. In the summer, the days are longer and much warmer. So there you have it. Don't forget to record your response using a key detail. And if you need help, you can listen to my example, but you can also listen to your classmates to get ideas. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to share. Right, so there you have an example. So that would be the prompt that students hear and view, and then all they do is click one button and they get to record their own response. So it's a neat way, and also gives you as a teacher, you get to review all of your student responses, and you can leave comments and feedback. So this is really neat for all ages, but it definitely works well for younger students as well. So going with the theme of what are the scaffolds and supports that we provide students before reading, while they're reading a text, and then after they're done reading the text, with moving them into independent work. And in this case, we're going to look at an example of independent writing, which we know can be very in a distance context for our younger students. So what I did is I, just like Maria had done earlier, recorded a Zoom session by myself that highlighted some of the examples that we got from students who used FlipGrid to answer my prompt, and then I set them up for writing. So let's take a look at about a minute-long section of this video, and we'll go from there. Looking at some of the responses that you shared using FlipGrid. So I really like, for example, how Gael shared that in the summer, the days are much longer. Xiomara shared that in the fall, the temperatures get much cooler. I agree. In the winter, Mario shared that people wear coats when going outside. And finally, Julia shared that in spring, the flowers begin to bloom. These are all great examples. So what we're going to do now is write one sentence describing one of the 4 seasons using a key detail. You can refer back to this chart that's on the screen right here, or you can use FlipGrid and listen to your friends' responses if you need some help. Remember that we're going to write one complete sentence about one of the seasons, and your sentences should start with a capital letter and always end with a period. I want you to add a drawing to your sentence, and then when you're done, please have your parent take a picture of your writing and send it to me. What I'm going to do is take all the pictures and post them up here so that we can see each other's writing and give each other some feedback and comments on all the great work that we're doing. So, all right, so there you have it, setting students up to write independently. And as we all know, at this age, we really don't want our students to be typing necessarily. We want them to work on their fine motor skills. We want them to use pencil and paper to write. So that's why I suggested having a family member snap a photo on their phone of their writing, send it to the teacher, and then we can post it up so that it can be shared with the class and be active. And again, also to promote students really still working on their fine motor while they're writing. Okay. So just to summarize, and we're going to be stopping in one moment to make sure we field some questions, but just to summarize what we saw in this last section were 3 different phonics and phonemic awareness routines with, that included gestures, visuals, and explaining the meaning of words and vocabulary. And then finally, some after reading activities that showed a gradual release of responsibility and included opportunities for student talk, as well as independent writing with some scaffolds to help our language learners. Okay. So we're going to move into, we have 2 sections for question and answer. This is our first one, about midway through, more or less. Some questions that we're posing for you guys are, what similar strategies have you used to support your English language learners or just your language learners in general? And then what questions are coming up for you as you think about how to apply these or similar strategies to your own settings? So please go ahead and use the chat feature, and we'll go ahead and try to answer a few of those questions for the group. So I think Nicole and Lubia are monitoring the chat. So if you guys don't mind voicing any questions that are coming up, we're happy to try our best to answer them.
Will do.
So I can, oh, are you ready, Ms. Sanchez?
Sure. Were you going to hit the non-Spanish speaker question?
Yes, go for it.
So we had one question about a particular teacher has some students who speak Tigrinya and Amharic, and having some questions about how to support students who are maybe not Spanish speakers, but speakers of other languages, recognizing when the teacher doesn't speak their language. Do you have any helpful tips or suggestions, best practices for that context?
I can start, and Maria, we can back and forth. But I think, you know, when we do have a language that's familiar or at least more more visible, like Spanish is here in the Bay Area, it is a little bit easier. So I definitely acknowledge the challenges as prominent here. And if you're a teacher who doesn't speak the language, but a lot of the scaffolds that we're highlighting, the use of visuals, the use of TPR, that's total physical response, the use of sentence frames, giving students the opportunity to hear their peers using language, all those are going to benefit students regardless of what their home language is. I would also say, if at all possible, if you do happen to have either siblings in the same class or someone who does speak the same home language of that student, thinking about when you, this is a little more in person, but it can also be done in distance, thinking about opportunities for them to talk and make meaning in their home language before trying to process in the second language, in this case, English. Do you want to add anything else, Maria, to that?
No, I think I don't know if you mentioned the visuals too. Like I try to provide not just the gestures, but you saw how I try to provide the visuals. And with some key, like for the key idea and details, for example, I think that the key idea was the pod, and the main idea was the pod. and the details were the flowers. So then they can also make those connections.
Great question, thank you. Any other questions?
There's a question around whether you have an opinion on FlipGrid versus Seesaw.
Maria, you're a bit more familiar with Seesaw than I am. Do you have any thoughts on that I can share about FlipGrid?
No, not really. I think that I've been doing more of the Google Zoom experience than Seesaw. And also then posting it on Google Classroom. We will share later an easy way to, not only easy, but like it's appropriate for TK through first to share all the videos that you do with your students.
I've been a big fan of FlipGrid since we saw it. And I'm a little bit less familiar with Seesaw, but I've heard fantastic things as well and seen some great examples. So I think it's whatever is comfortable for you. We're trying to show a couple of different platforms and different ways of getting at things. In the end, it comes down to what works for you and what will you use to help support your students. So I don't think there's, for the particular question, I would choose whichever one works best for you.
And I think that by and large, Daniela, Maria, we've heard very positive commentary from both. We can't share any red flags about the tools for this context.
I would also just add in my son is at a school that's using Seesaw, so I'm familiar with it as a parent actually, and it's a little bit of a broader platform. So it's kind of, if you are using Seesaw to post your assignments, to post your readings, then it's a great way to integrate that speaking opportunity, and there's no reason to add a separate program or app for students. But if you're not, then FlipGrid is very versatile and can be used with any platform. So that's what I would say. If you're using Seesaw anyway, then use that for that speaking opportunity, because then that's one less app or program that students and families need to learn. But if you're not, then FlipGrid is a great tool to use.
I'm just reading here on the chat that it says that Seesaw is only visible to the teacher. Students can watch each other's videos. Someone posted. So then we have why one would be more useful for one context or the other.
Yeah, I think it's maybe Khalith can share a little bit more, but I think it's probably how you configure the settings. Students can listen to each other. Khalith, do you have anything to add?
Yes, that's true that that FlipGrid, you can change that in the settings as far as whether students can share videos with each other. You can also set it so that you need to approve other students' videos before they're shared with other students. And I might just add, I just put this in the chat, but Seesaw it's a broader platform. It's a learning management system where all kinds of things, assignments can be posted. It's kind of similar to Google Classroom. It's an alternative to Google Classroom. And FlipGrid has a much more narrow application. It's for sharing short videos with each other. So kind of two different types of platforms.
Thank you, Khalith.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're going to move on to the next section. Like we mentioned before, we'll have another natural stopping point in a little bit to ask questions. But if you do have anything else that's surfacing more, please go ahead and drop your comments in the chat, and we can always try to address stuff in the moment too. We're going to move on to the final essential practice that we are going to be examining in this presentation, and that's addressing the needs of the whole child and really leveraging family and community supports. So we're going to see a couple examples of that in one moment.
Yes. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to see is some examples about how to organize asynchronous learning that is age appropriate for TK through first grade. So one of the things that we wanted to share with you is this document here that we created. So one thing that we have noticed is that instead of having just a Google Classroom where you are posting each activity that has a flow that could be confusing for TK, K, or first grade students, you can have everything in just one page per week. So instead of having like 10 videos a week or 20 videos a week, you still have them, but all in one document. You can see here that if it's for the whole week, like they will notice that they have to follow the routines every day. right? We also included some visuals to support them to anticipate what they are going to see in each section. So for the phonics, you will have the phonics section with a visual, the same for the before reading, during reading, after reading, writing that we saw. And the other days are not filled because we just wanted to show you the lessons that you have seen actually here today. So all of them are linked there. So this would be a way of supporting your TK and first students to have everything in one place that is easy to access to everything.
All right, so we're going to see just another example in a moment. This is from the teacher that we saw doing the Michael Hegarty phonemic awareness routine, Miss Raja, first grade teacher from Madison Park. And again, she did something pretty similar. We know, as Maria was saying, that for all students, but really for age group in particular, predictability, routine, knowing what's coming up really helps the day flow a lot better. So she's grouped her day in this schedule here where students can click on the links or have their parents click on the links for everything from the phonemic awareness routine to ELA to writing to math. And it's pretty easily laid out so the student can kind of see what's happening every day. And she's included some visuals as well for the math section. So that's just another way of doing the same thing that Maria was describing.
And you have noticed the one that we use is pretty similar to this one because we actually, we saw first her example and we thought that it was so great that then we had just started our resources on a similar one. And you also can see how she even has it translated into Spanish in the second section.
Okay, and finally, we're going to look at one more example. Again, there's all kinds of different ways to get at the same concept. What I wanted to show you is that whatever works for you is what you should choose. So here's another way. Greenleaf, the Kinder team, instead of having a Google document with links, they actually set up a website where you can go to the week, and for every day of the week, you click on the day and it'll send you to the activities that are happening. So we saw some of the examples before from Marta Saiz, kindergarten teacher there, with the phonics routine. And then there's the read aloud, the math lesson, ELD, even PE and physical education. So another great way of organizing it. It really depends on how your grade level team does it, how your site does it, but there's different ways to get at it. And it really does help our younger students know, okay, for this day, these are going to be my activities that I need to get through. Okay.
And I would like to also add that you can see, if you want to see Greenleaf's website, you have it there at the top. The same with all the examples that we have seen. They are linked there, you can see them. Okay, so we try to provide you access to all the resources that we are sharing here. Okay.
All right, and then one thing that we definitely want to highlight is just the importance of still including moments for mindfulness and fun throughout the online experience. So you'll see linked in here a couple of resources like Mindful Schools. Go Noodle is actually a really neat YouTube channel that gives a lot of like brain break activity videos, Cosmic Kids Yoga, etc. So there's a lot of resources there, but we always like to highlight the incredible work that our teachers are doing here in OUSD. So we have on the next slide, I believe.
1 second.
A couple different ways of doing this that we wanted to highlight. So one way that's a really nice restorative practice and a community circle practice is to ask the students a question at the beginning of the week via video. And this could be done through FlipGrid, it could be done through Seesaw, through Google Classroom, and then students have all week long to respond to the prompt. And this is not necessarily an academic prompt, but more focusing on the social emotional learning aspect. The nice thing is that then the teacher can compile the responses over the course of the week and then share them back with their students on a Friday. And as we mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, it can be very isolating, not just for us as adults, but for our students to be at home and not be interacting with their peers. So this is a nice way to A, have your voice heard, recognized, and seen. B, get to hear your peers' responses, and then just kind of feel connected, even though we are physically distanced at this point. So that's a nice way of starting off your week. We have another example. This is Mr. Pablo, who is actually, I must confess, not a kindergarten or first grade or TK teacher. He's actually a second grade teacher, but we wanted to use this example. He teaches over at the Q's cues over at the Lockwood campus. And this is a really great example of how he incorporates a morning message and some mindfulness. And he actually outsources his daughter to help do the mindfulness. And I need to warn you, this is extraordinarily cute, so prepare yourself. So we're gonna look at 2 sections.
Hey class, Mr. Pablo here. It is Monday, May 11th. I am standing in my front yard in front of a redwood tree. We're gonna talk more about trees later today and later this week, and also about pizza. So think about how maybe trees and pizza might be connected. I have no idea. Today, you're gonna start out with some mindfulness with Sienna, and then you're gonna do a journal entry about family. I know yesterday was Mother's Day, and if your mother is with you, she's around you, there's dinner time. Bye.
Now, hi, Mr. Pablo students. Today I'm going to lead you in mindfulness. First, take 3 mindful breaths. Slowly breathe in your air, but try to keep your air. And what did your heart look like? Did it look happy? How did your heart feel? Thank you. I like.
All right, so there we have again an example of how to incorporate some mindfulness, some moments to connect with our students, and really focus in on the social emotional learning, on really the that aspect of our students that deserves just as much attention as the academic portion, in both in person and in distance learning. And again, thanks to all of our teachers who have contributed incredible examples of how they're doing so in the classroom. Maria, did you want to add something?
If you want to follow Pablo, there you have his YouTube channel. I have seen some of the videos and they are great.
And again, if you happen to tune in a little late, all of the videos, everything that that we're seeing on this slide presentation, if you click on the image, it'll send you to a link and you can check it out. All right. So we're coming to the end of our presentation, but we did want to give one more opportunity to ask any questions that are coming up about anything you've seen. You want to apply it to your classroom. So if you don't mind using the chat feature, and we're going to have again our chat monitors call out any questions for the good of the whole group. And just while we're waiting for some questions to come in, wanted to just do a quick promo for another webinar that we're having later on the week. This Friday, the 15th, at the same time at 11 a.m., we're going to have a webinar hosted by Elma on how to promote student talk through distance learning. So I'm waiting to see if any questions roll in.
Not yet. So we did get one question. Any ideas for community circle questions or activities to bring closure to the end of the school year? This is, I can offer at the top of my head, a couple of ideas around how students feel that they have grown in the last month, what things that they can do now that they weren't able to do before. So kind of taking a reflective stance on what new skills and or dispositions they've developed in the last month. And also trying to maybe support the much needed hopeful stance of what are they looking forward to. And perhaps also final question might be around feedback. So as I busy up to plan for next year, what advice would you give me as a teacher to make sure that this is a great experience in case we have to do it again? So maybe somewhere between, you know, reflection stance, a hope, wish, and also some feedback for their learning experience. Those would be some suggestions I have. Others?
I was thinking about celebration. You know, like every time that I was thinking about the end of the week videos, it was also about celebrating their learning and seeing each other. Yes, seeing each other and how they have learned from each other too.
Mhm.
That's great question. That's definitely on a lot of people's minds right now, how to wrap up the year.
Might also ask the kids for a commitment. So, you know, we're going into a summer for about 6 weeks where I'm not going to see you. What are the things that you're committing to as a learner to do so that you can take, you know, ownership of your learning? Something like that.
We had another thought from one of our participants of a thought of what you're taking into the new school year, new best practices or experiences. Somebody else is sharing, they're using FlipGrid to share our favorite memories of kindergarten. That's really sweet since they're not going to be able to physically see each other in person. I love that idea. Any other thoughts? It's great to hear from you as well, what you're thinking. Okay. Do we want to bring it to the close?
I think we will. Just wanted to say thanks again to everyone for joining in today. Again, this will be recorded, or this is being recorded. So if you do have colleagues, other lower elementary teachers who couldn't join in, please spread the word and let them know that you can go in a few days to the Teacher Central website from OUSD, and you can click on the link and watch a recording of this. Thanks again to your incredible effort to making our students' experiences as great as it can be given our circumstances. It's definitely a lot of work, and it's really, really appreciated. So we wanted to finish up with a closing prompt of just using the chat feature to share one takeaway. It could be small, it could be big, for something that you would like to incorporate into your own teaching practice in the time that we have left in this school year. And as Libya mentioned, thinking ahead in case we find ourselves still in this situation in the beginning of next school year. And we'll read some of those out loud as they come in to the chat. So we've got some checking out FlipGrid. Definitely appreciate all the examples of how to think about wrapping up the year. Having students share videos so that they can see each other even if they're not able to attend Zoom calls. That's great. Yeah, the importance of seeing and hearing their friends.
One thing that I have heard from teachers is also recording their own classes. So the students that are not able to join in at the moment, at least they can see it later and see some of the classmates in the Zoom classes.
So more calling out the importance of mindfulness and fun, showing pictures of the class throughout the year. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, folks. Nicole, you're going to bring us to a formal close, yes?
So if you could just take us to our the slide with our contact information. I just want to reiterate all of the appreciation. I am just so inspired by the videos that we saw, and we know that, you know, so many of you are just doing just phenomenal work and really difficult and challenging and new circumstances. So we appreciate you. Really appreciate the teachers that have been willing to make their work public and share with you. And then of course our multilingual team, Maria, Danielle, and Lubia, thank you so much for the work and putting all of this together. Just want to make sure that folks have access to our contact information. So again, at the bottom of each slide, you see this tiny URL link to the actual slide deck. And if you go in there, you can click on any of the names. It will take you to an email. Please follow up with us if you have any specific questions. You can see the OUSD Teacher Central page is linked here, as well as we do have an English Language Learner and ELL page that is also linked. And we are continuing to update that with resources. We have Google Drive folders where you'll see some of the specific resources you saw today and many others, as well as all of our recorded webinars. So I think that's it for us. Again, a reminder that Friday we're going to go deep onto student talk, building on what you heard today and seeing more examples across all grade levels and content. And with that, we just thank you for your time and everything that you do for our students and families. Anyone else want to say goodbye, close out? Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yes, goodbye.